Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Making Zoom Sessions More Engaging webinar. We do have some people that will probably be popping in a little couple minutes late, but we are going to go ahead and get started. I do want to mention that there is going to be kind of a little activity a little bit later on in the webinar. If you have your cell phone handy, that would be helpful. And also, I did want to let everyone know that I will email a list of sources that I used to inform my presentation today at the conclusion of the webinar. There will be time for questions at the end, so I'm going to do the presentation. If you have a question that occurs to you during the presentation, maybe just jot it down, and then at the end there will be plenty of time for me to answer any questions that you might have. So our objectives for today, we're going to look at some reasons for what they are calling Zoom fatigue. This is a new thing that they came up with in the last year and a half, I think, not just for students, but just for everybody having to be on Zoom meetings so often. And I guess this is another new thing that we have to worry about now, Zoom fatigue. We're going to look at ways that we can encourage students to participate in your Zoom sessions, to encourage them to speak up and maybe interact a little bit more. We're going to talk about how you can use Zoom polls and surveys to increase engagement. I'll give you a few ideas on how to do that. We're going to also look at using breakout rooms. So giving students the chance to talk in a little smaller group setting often helps to encourage them to participate. We're going to look at the Zoom nonverbal communication tools, and we'll talk a little bit about ways that you could even have students take a little bit of control as well. I do want to mention that this is not going to be a basic Zoom webinar. So if you are brand new to Zoom and you don't know how to set up a meeting or share that link with your students, those types of things, there is a video in the Canvas Faculty Hub, as well as some other resources that you can use. So if you're looking for more basic Zoom help, or if you're after this webinar, you've got some types of questions like that, visit the Canvas Faculty Hub and you will find videos and tutorials in there on using Zoom. If you need to be added to the Canvas Faculty Hub, you can see that email address right there. And also, if you don't have a Zoom account, a CCC Zoom account, you can also send that request to that e-learning email address as well, and we will work with OIT to get you set up with your faculty Zoom account. All right, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this Zoom fatigue thing, but we're just to kind of mention, it's kind of interesting when I was looking at the science of this whole Zoom fatigue thing and how our brains actually have to work harder because when we're in a Zoom meeting, it's sort of an unnatural means of communication and interaction. So our brains are actually working harder to overcome the lack of nonverbal cues where you're just staring at someone's face. We're used to a certain way of being able to communicate with each other, and it works differently on Zoom. And also, if you have conducted some Zoom sessions in the past, you may have noticed that the way that you've always taught in the past in a face-to-face class doesn't always translate so well to a Zoom meeting. So sometimes the lecture that you may have always done and it worked super well when you had a group of students may not work quite as well when you're trying to do that same thing via Zoom. It can also be difficult for instructors to figure out or gauge if students are understanding what is being taught via Zoom. And I thought it was interesting. I also saw that humor is more challenging. I crack myself up on a daily basis, but it's a little bit impossible for me to tell if anyone is laughing with me or at me. And so that is something that I know that other instructors have picked up on, that it can be just a little more challenging, that the vibe is a little bit different on Zoom. So just a couple of things that you can do from the outset to sort of encourage Zoom participation. I've read a couple of articles where instructors offered small group introductory sessions for students prior to the start of the semester. So send out an invitation to have students maybe meet with them in smaller groups, not as a way of instruction, but just as sort of a way to meet your students and have them be able to establish some sort of rapport with you as well as with their classmates in a very low risk environment. So not actually instruction going on, but just building that foundation. Another thing, and this seems kind of obvious, but then we don't always maybe do this, is to let students know, hey, this is sort of different for me, and I would really like to encourage you to participate in a Zoom classroom session. If we're learning new content online, it would be great if you can speak up and ask if you've got a question, or if I ask a question, to pop up and don't be afraid to speak up the way that you would in class. Another interesting idea that I saw was instructor that used breakout rooms, or just kind of opened up the Zoom room early, a couple minutes early, and just allowed students to sort of chat with each other the way they kind of would naturally if they were in a classroom setting. Just again, to sort of allow students to feel like they are getting to know each other a little bit. And of course, if they're meeting on campus as well, then you would probably already have those relationships there, but it's nice to be able to continue that in an online environment. And then another idea would be to provide incentive for participating. So if you're having Zoom meetings and students aren't necessarily getting on there to participate, you could give them the option and say, hey, you can do the Zoom meeting, or I'm going to also instead put this prompt in the discussion, and if you have your choice, so you could either type a response to something, not to be punitive, but as an option for someone, it might encourage some of them to be more likely to get in there and join your Zoom meetings. Another quick thing, kind of let students know ahead of time what the Zoom session is going to be about. Let them know that they may be called on, or they may be expected to participate in a group discussion, so they should be prepared to do that. Give them a little bit of insight about what that Zoom session is going to be. And when you are having a lecture, or you're having students respond to a discussion, allow time for them to respond, even if it gets a little awkward. So even if you're all kind of sitting there staring at each other, eventually the students are going to feel it's just as awkward as you do, and somebody is going to speak up. And it also sets the tone and expectation that you are not going to sit there and do everything. You are going to expect them to pitch in sometimes, and even if it gets a little awkward, you're going to make them actually participate. And then I'm sure you've all done it at some point in a face-to-face class. Call on a student to share if necessary, not to embarrass someone, but again, just to set that expectation that you are expecting the students to participate. So actually, it doesn't look like, let me pull this up. It doesn't look like it's coming up for me here. What I'm going to do though, is I am going to have you go into breakout rooms, and I'll show you how you will set up breakout rooms if you're interested in doing that in your own classes. But I'm just going to put you into groups of 3, and I just want you for 2 or 3 minutes just to share with each other what you have used Zoom for in the past. Are you new to Zoom? Have you used it with your students? Have you just been a participant in other people's hosted Zoom meetings like this one, or have you had experiences with using it with your students? And then also, what do you want to use it for in the future? What would you like to be able to use Zoom for? So I'm going to go ahead and create all the rooms. I'm opening all the rooms. So you should have an invitation at the top that will invite you to join the room. And again, we're just going to take just a minute. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. So I know there were a couple people had a little bit of audio issues, but I just sort of wanted to give you an idea of what it's going to look like for you to have your students in breakout rooms. You will have the ability to join in or kind of float from breakout room to breakout room if you use those. So your students can talk about whatever your topic is that you've given them, and you can kind of pop in and out, figure out what they're discussing. And in just a minute, we're going to talk about surveys first, but I will give you a little more information on how to set up breakout rooms and your different options that you have for that. Okay, so let me make sure that I am sharing my screen here. Okay, so I do want to talk about putting up a poll or survey. And I apologize, I did have a survey for you, but I switched the meeting from a webinar to a meeting. And I guess that my survey didn't quite carry over. So I apologize for that. But you can use surveys or polls. A poll would be just one question. A survey would be more than one question that you're asking your students. And a couple ways to do that. So you could always provide your question that you're going to use for your Zoom session beforehand, sort of let the students know what it's going to be. Maybe if there's a text that they're reading, that could be their purpose for reading that week to get their answer to that question. You could also assign a different student each week to come up with the question for the week so that you're kind of getting them involved and allowing them to pose their own question to the students. If you're getting students to think about the day's topic, you can kind of use that as a springboard to start a discussion. Another interesting, find out where the class stands on an issue. If you're talking about something that is maybe there's two sides to an argument, and you could get a quick baseline of where everyone is. If it's a new topic and you're kind of wanting to see what everyone already knows about it before you start, that would be a good way to get an idea of where you need to start with them, what they may already know. You can use them in conjunction with breakout rooms, which would have been the original plan was to have you discuss the poll that was, or the survey. Share the results with students. So you can share so that other students can see what their classmates responded. And one thing I like about it is it allows it to be anonymous. So if a student has one opinion at the beginning of the class and then maybe their opinion becomes more informed and changes, there's really no risk in them owning that opinion at the beginning because it's anonymous. And so they're not going to feel feel worried about people knowing that they've changed their mind, or if they're taking a stance that they might feel is unpopular. It's okay, they can express that because no one, it's an anonymous thing. You can also check for understanding with a survey or a poll. So again, it's safe and anonymous. They're not going to feel stupid or feel embarrassed in front of their classmates if they respond that they don't understand or that they need some more clarification, if that's what you've put into the poll, because their classmates don't know who is asking for more information or who needs help. So to set up a poll or survey, you will, after you set up your meeting, you can click on the name of the meeting, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll see this as part of the settings here. So under polls, you can click the create poll. You can actually also create a poll during the Zoom meeting as well, once it's already underway, although that might be a little difficult if you're trying to present at the same time, but you can set that up ahead of time. And go back for 1 second. And you can always save those polls as well for, if you save that as a template for future use, then you don't have to recreate those polls if you're using them with more than one Zoom session. So breakout rooms, we just talked about some because I wanted you to experience the breakout room and see what they could be used for. But you could create several breakout rooms. You could call them each something different. So my favorite movie, this was an idea that I saw on an instructor's blog that they do at the beginning of the semester. They have one room called My Favorite Movie, one room called My Favorite Band, whatever, some kind of a fun topic. And then the students, you can set it up so the students can move from room to room if they'd like. So kind of jumpstarts a fun conversation. You could also do it for something academic content if you wanted to as well, and just give each group or each breakout room the name of whatever the topic is. A lot of instructors like to assign a leader for the group for the week or for the session and have that person take notes and then share out to the main group once the breakout rooms are closed. And again, you can always pop in to the group for a quick check-in. Just one quick note, if you are recording your Zoom session, which we do encourage you to do if you're giving new content, instructing new content, so that if there is someone that can't be there for that, they can still record. If you're recording it, you can share it with them later. So wherever you are, that's what's going to be recorded. So if you pop into a breakout room, it will record that breakout room while you are in there. So that's just kind of an FYI so that you know how that will work. So you can set up the breakout rooms before a meeting. So if you want to be able to have students in a particular room working with particular groups, you can do that within the meeting too, but it might be a little quicker to do the breakout room pre-assign. And that's going to be in your settings and your meeting options for that particular meeting. And if you want to, if you have the email addresses of the people that you know are going to be there, you can just click this add create rooms, or you can fill out a CSV file, it's an Excel spreadsheet. And if you fill it out in a certain format, it'll go ahead and set those up for you. You can also just do it right in the meeting. So you'll see a breakout rooms button at the bottom that you can click on in the meeting, and then you can create however many breakout rooms you need. What I just did was assign everyone automatically and just put one less. If I want 3 people in and I have 10 people, I can just put it to 3 rooms and then it will automatically put that extra person in one of the rooms. You can still assign manually if you'd like, or you can also let the participants choose what breakout room they would like to be in. And that way, if there is, and then you can still go in and move people around if you need to, or if there's someone in a room by themselves, you can always jump in or move them to a different room as well. So this is what that screen looks like here. You would be able to assign individual students to whatever room you want them to if you're not doing it randomly. All right, so another thought about using Zoom and kind of making things a little bit more interesting or engaging for your students is to integrate some outside technology. So for example, if you've ever used Kahoot, it's a fun review, sort of competitive review tool that you can create a quiz, and we're going to look at one at a Kahoot in just a minute. Quizzes is another one that you can create a quiz that's done independently by the students, but it times them and there's a leaderboard at the end. Just sort of a fun, low risk way, but students, if they're competitive, they may still enjoy trying to get to the top of the leaderboard. And with either one of these, or there's other options that are similar, take a break partway through. So if you're meeting with your students for a longer period of time, you can always stop partway through to check for understanding using Kahoot or quizzes or something similar. You could wrap up with a quick 5-question quiz at the end using one of these, or even at the beginning, sort of as a reminder for the last session to sort of review the content that you've already covered in class. So I do want to actually have you guys play Kahoot if you've never seen this before. And this is the reason why I said if you have your phone handy, And if you can go to www.kahoot.it or .it, and let me get back here. And I'm going to pull this up here and pull this back up. Once you go to kahoot.it, it will ask you for a code, and I am going to pull up that code right now. Okay, so there is our game pin right up there at the top. So if you go to kahoot.it and then put in this game pin, and I just want to demonstrate how this could be easily used as a quick review. And this is just going to be some easy questions about Zoom, what we've gone over so far. I'll give everyone else just another minute, but then we'll just go ahead and get started after that in case there's people that aren't participating because they can't at the moment. Otherwise, it's just going to be Amy versus Rose. Sorry, guys. And by the way, this plays some interesting, challenging music. I'm not going to put that on, but it plays some inspirational music while the students are playing the game if you've never used it before. Kahoot is free. There is a paid version, but I've always used the free version and it works well. You can also get feedback on the questions that students missed, so they can kind of help inform your instruction, so you know the things that you need to go back over or concepts that maybe need to be revisited in the next class. All right, let's go ahead and begin. So you have to have your phone in front of you and you will see the questions pop up, and then you're going to click the button. And there is a timer. Once everybody answers, it will automatically move on. And you can see the scoreboard. All right, so as you can see, it goes by the right answer, but also the speed with which people answer. Rose is moving up. All right, I mean, you could use it to find out if your haircut looks weird, but might not be the best use of class time. So this is a little trickier question. We're going to go over this in just a minute. Amy's back in the lead. All right, last question. All right, so then at the end, it dramatically shows the top three. Oh, and Mike Colbert dramatically came from behind to win in the end. So, so this is just something fun that, you know, students can use to sort of just, you can review, you can create. There's a lot of Kahoot quizzes for all age levels that have already been created that you can use and edit to kind of fit what your topic is, but you can also create them completely from scratch, as I did here. So just one other way that you can kind of hopefully get people to get your students a little bit more engaged in what is going on in the Zoom session. All right. So the next thing that we're going to look at is the nonverbal feedback. Now this, you have to make sure that it is turned on. So when you create a meeting, you'll see on the left-hand side, you'll want to click on settings. and it's under this in meeting basic section here. And just make sure that the non-verbal feedback is turned on, and then also meeting reactions. These are pretty similar. And so this allows students to kind of give you if they need you to slow down a little bit, you'll see there's a slow down emoji here, or slow down symbol here. They could give a thumbs up if you're having them vote on something, or if you're checking for understanding. They can also raise their hands if you are asking a question and you want someone to respond, but you have them muted. You could always have them use the raise hand emoji and then unmute that particular student. But it's nice that they can give you this without you having them all unmuted, which can sometimes lead to a lot of background noise. But this gives you an idea of how things are going in the class and allows you to check for understanding. So some other considerations about Zoom: that shorter is better. So if you can give your students things to prepare for a Zoom session beforehand, so have them read over anything that they can or watch a video, and then come to the Zoom session with their questions, or for you to elaborate or expound on that content in a way that will help to inform what they already know, that works better than an hour or an hour-long lecture where you're sitting there and talking. As I'm sure as you all know, that there's been a lot of studies on how long people can pay attention in one sitting and how much information they can absorb. So shorter is better. And even if it is a longer session, mixing it up now and then by checking for understanding with a poll or with a survey, or throwing in a Kahoot break or something, breakout rooms, where they're able to take a minute or two away from just sitting there listening and have them be actively engaged. And that's sort of what the mix it up idea is. So not just sitting there the whole time and just listening. And again, we really, really encourage, if you are using Zoom sessions for presenting new content, for doing lectures, those types of things, we really want to make sure that that information is not only going to be provided in that Zoom session, since again, students may not be able to make that particular Zoom session if their schedule doesn't allow it. We don't want those students to not have access to that information. But if you are recording it and the session looks engaging and fun or informative in a way that they could not replicate that on their own, then they would probably be more likely to join in on that session than if it was just a hour-long talking, for the teacher talking for an hour. Which again, if you are having an extended period of time of talking, then there are a lot of ways that you can sort of mix it up for the students to be able to participate. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to unmute everyone. And so if anyone has any questions, you could also use the chat. So if you would like to just type your question in, I'd be happy to, or if you don't have a microphone, we can always answer questions that way as well. So I think I've asked to unmute everyone. That doesn't mean that you have to unmute yourself if you don't have a question, but if you do, you do have the option to unmute yourself now. So if anyone has any questions, feel free.
Hi, Jenny, it's Amy. I have a quick question.
Absolutely.
On my screen, I don't see anything as far as making breakout rooms down at the bottom. Is that just because I'm not the host of this meeting and it's only 4 hosts?
Yeah, so you probably would not see that, but I do want to, you also want to make sure that it is turned on. So in your settings, sorry, it got logged out here. But you do want to make sure that you have the breakout rooms enabled in your meeting settings. So pull this up quickly. So if you create a meeting, oops, excuse me. Go. If we come down here, so this is where you can do the breakout room pre-assign right here, and click the create rooms if you want to, or import from CSV. And then in the settings, you'll just want to make sure that you've got the breakout rooms turned on. There we go. So it's under the in-meeting advanced settings. So breakout room, just make sure that that is toggled on if you're not seeing it. I believe that you do actually have to come in and turn it on. Once it's turned on though, it will remain turned on. You don't have to keep turning it on for each meeting.
Jenny,
Mm-hmm.
in our breakout room, we started to talk about the difference between Zoom and Big Blue Button. In your opinion, do you think that there's a different situation where you would use Big Blue Button, or do you advocate for Zoom?
I think Zoom is more reliable. Big Blue Button it's a little glitchier and I haven't used it in a little while, but I know that there were some issues with students not being able to see each other. It's a little bit cumbersome because to save bandwidth, in order for students to be able to see each other, you have to go in and make all the students a moderator. Another issue is that if, let's say, a student got added to your class after you set up a Big Blue Button meeting, that student would not automatically be added to that meeting, and they wouldn't even see the conference when they click on Big Blue Button because they would not have been added to it. So it's just a little bit, it works okay, but it's a little bit more cumbersome. So I actually just recommend not messing with Big Blue Button. Another thing with that is that we've had issues where instructors didn't have their meeting record, even though they recorded it, it wasn't available afterward. And there's no way for us to get that recording if it doesn't work. So, and we haven't really had that issue with Zoom. So I would recommend at this point, since we do have Zoom now, just use that rather than Big Blue Button, would be my opinion. So that's a good question. When the pandemic first happened, we didn't have Zoom yet. We were working from free Zoom accounts, which have their, of course, limitations of not being able to go beyond 40 minutes and that type of thing. So people were kind of having to use Big Blue Button more, but now that Zoom is an option for us, I would recommend just using that. So that's a very good question. And again, if there's anyone in here who does not yet have a CCC Zoom account, you can email us and request that, and we'll be happy to get that set up for you. All right, well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining our webinar today. There will be a recording of this webinar that will be put into the Canvas Faculty Hub. And I will just show everyone real briefly where to find any recorded videos in the hub. And again, if anybody needs to be added to the hub, you can email us at elearning@camdencc.edu as well for that. But within the hub, you will click on the modules button, and then if you scroll down a little bit to interactive tools, you'll see Zoom here. There's a video that we did in the past to show you all the basics. And there's also links to the Zoom guides and tutorials that they have themselves. And then over here under recorded webinars, this is where today's webinar will be put if anybody needs it. All right. So thank you so much, everyone. Again, if any other questions pop up that you think of that you forgot to ask during this session, feel free to email those. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining today. And I hope everyone has a great afternoon.